Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the TriMetric tracking system and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the TriMetric Roadmap podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. I'm Scott Landis here with Jeff Jacob, and today we are continuing our series on executive performance, which executive performance is one part of our TriMetric system where we track not only executive performance, but also business health and life quality, all at the same time, because we are here to help support business owners and founders of businesses that are trying to do all the things really well, not just have a good business, but have a good life quality. And they need to have good leadership and executive performance to make all of it work. So that's what we've been doing in our series. Each one of the three in the TriMetric has 7 different elements or domains that we look at and we measure. And so in executive performance, it's no different. We have 7 different domains, and we've been going through those. Today, let's see. The last couple of weeks, we talked about leadership, or we talked about vision and strategy. We talked about, what was that last week, Jeff? Do you remember?
Leadership presence and emotional maturity.
Yes, and today it's communication and alignment. So we're going to dive into that. Jeff, good to see you again. How are you doing?
Good, Scott. This has been a fun series so far. I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, you say that about everything. You're always having fun and always so delightful to be around and positive. So I would expect nothing less than for you to say that about this series. But yeah, I would agree. It's truly a good series. I mean, we spent so much time on business health over the last year, you and I working together, working on the business health diagnostic and perfecting it. And boy, is it a good thing, a good tool. And by the way, I just want to tell you, if you're listening, if you want to get our business health diagnostic, we've got a cool new URL where you can get our free BHD Lite, business health diagnostic light version. It's at, get this, Jeff, bhdforme.com, BHD number 4 me.com, bhdforme.com, and you get a free BHD Lite, Jeff. What?
It's impressive. It's what an offering. It's great creativity with the website choosing, Scott. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. And that'll redirect you to our special offer where you will see all the details about the BHD Lite and the whole process that we go through. But today we're talking about executive performance. And where do we want to start today? When we talk about communication and alignment, there's several areas you could go there, but we want to focus it today and make it, as usual, practical for our listeners, Jeff. So where do we want to start today?
Well, I think we should talk about communication in terms of communicating the alignment of where the organization's going and how everybody fits into that. And of course, that has to start with your why, but we don't want to focus too much and take too much time on the why. We talk about that regularly. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's book. You start with the why, and it's just a really powerful way to go. So let's just assume that aspect. The next step really is communicating with your team members of what the why is for the organization, and then goal setting comes into place with all of that. And Scott, you're great at leading people into the goal setting aspect.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, it's not about necessarily, I mean, goals are about what we're going to accomplish, and we want those to be specific and measurable and attainable and realistic and time bound and all those things to make it a SMART goal. We want it to be well defined. And that goes into this piece on kind of communicating the why. But it really is about when you talk about communicating and alignment properly to what's important in the why, it's not so much about what to do, it's about why are we doing it? And that, as you alluded to, needs to be done on a regular, consistent basis to have good communication. Why is that?
Right, absolutely. So there's a reason we started with vision and mission. The mission being something that never changes. The vision is the preferred future that we're leading into for this next season, however long that season is. And then we go into the why. And that is the driving force. It's the engine of all of these choices we're making. Um, really is the why. So then the why leads into the 90-day plans, the goal setting, the tracking of tasks and metrics and helping figure out why all that is, but it's driven by the why. And so there are a couple different strategies to really get the team aligned because it's what the why is isn't going to make a big difference unless your core team is aligned with that why. And then the vision does dilute as you go down levels away from the founder. But you want to be able, so therefore, you want to be able to communicate it and get everybody as strong and clear as possible at that top level and equip them to be able to trickle that down to everyone else. And so there are a couple strategies. Do you want me to go into those different strategies that are on my mind right now, Scott?
Yeah, sure. And if you can tie it to, I don't know if you can, if I ask you like if you've worked with a team or observed a team that kind of just wasn't as effective as it could be because they maybe were hearing instructions, they were hearing, here's the goals, the deliverables, but they didn't really get the context and the why. If you could weave that in, I don't know if anything comes to mind, but that would be helpful. But yeah, go with what you got, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, we will get into clarity and confusion, but there are a couple, and these different strategies, I want to mention that now because a couple of the different strategies do affect the clarity and confusion. You have to manage them differently, but you have to go with who you are. And so you have to know with who the founder is. Who's the one leading this organization? Are you more of a top-down leader, or are you more of a community, like from the team up kind of leader? And more of a coach in that way. There's the authoritarian or the coach, and there's other versions of leaders, but those are the main two that I'm going with for this and for this topic. And with an authoritarian kind of leader, that's more of a top-down style. And that strategy is to be very clear with what the vision is. And hopefully that has happened through different conversations. And so you have the vision, you have the why, and you communicate it with key individuals ahead of time, sharpen it yourself, bring the team together, and then present it and ask questions, talk through it. And you want people around you who are going to say, how can we make this happen, as opposed to here's why it can't happen. And you can coach that in people if they're not just automatically naturally that kind of person, but those are the kind of people you want in your core team when you're presenting ideas and presenting new vision, new strategies. But to be able to then take that after it's been sharpened through conversations with key people, whether they're on the team or not, bring the team together and all being united and making sure everybody is thoroughly clear on what the goals are moving forward and what this why is, what this strategy is we're going to implement. So that's the one strategy. The other strategy is more of the group. We're coming together to create the why. We're coming together to create the new strategy, the new vision, whatever it is for that season. And that strategy is done a little differently, but there's a key element in that where you still have to know what you are feeling. You're the leader, everything comes down to you. And so, therefore, you have to know what is on your mind, on your heart for the direction you're going, and have an idea of that coming into it. And then I was talking to my daughters this week about the Socratic seminars that they do and those discussions where Socrates, what he did was he would have a conversation, let people kind of come through conversation to an idea. And there's that element where you bring the core team together, you bring up a topic of conversation, ask some questions, and maybe give them a little bit of framework and say, hey, this is kind of the general idea of where we want to go. let's come together and figure out and sharpen this, and then let everybody speak into it. And as that's going along, you take more, you have more pointed questions. And instead of saying, this is a bad idea because of this, or here's why that wouldn't work, then now you say, okay, what about this issue that would come up in that situation? How does that change your thought on it? And let them work through it themselves. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to come up with what you had envisioned anyway. But there's more buy-in in that way. There's more buy-in with the coaching kind of element of leadership, where people feel like they helped create this strategy. And so now, therefore, they have more ownership in making it happen. And so there's a lot of power in that. But if that's just not you, figure out a different way to do it through individual conversations, and then bring the team together to go make it happen. Does that make sense?
Nice. Yep. Yep. So
Oh,
a
you
good
wanted
way
examples. I didn't bring those in. I have a couple if you want, but do you want to go a different way?
Yeah. Go for examples, and I'll just interject here. So one question you can kind of ask your team, at the next staff meeting, or if you just grab 3 people and you take whatever strategic objective is on the list right now. Let's say we're going to, go from 2 to 2.5 million this year, and you ask them, why are we doing this objective right now? Why are we doing this thing that is on our list, that is a goal or objective? Why are we doing it? If you ask 3 individuals that, would their answers match yours? If you get totally different answers all over the board, then there's probably a misalignment on why. That'd be a clue that you're not getting their buy-in or communicating the why behind the what effectively. So good test question to ask that you can make it practical that way. So
I
what
always
examples
start
do
our
you have?
strategic planning sessions with that. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not always, but usually I start with that just to see where the alignment is. And then at the end, doing another test to see, okay, where are we now? And then at the subsequent meetings, having somebody say, okay, what are our goals for this quarter? Those kinds of things. And so they're always coming up. It has to be continually ingrained in people. I was a part of one organization where I was being positioned to not take over, but to inherit the leadership of that organization
Mm-hmm.
when the leader retired. And the previous leader had been, and people loved him, and he had been very authoritarian. And I was more coach. I'm just naturally more coach based in my leadership. And so when he would come in, he was a visionary, authoritarian style of leadership. And he would come in and bring this vision and tell everybody where we're going. And then every once in a while it would change. And people would be excited about it, but they wouldn't have that buy-in with it. They loved being a part of it. They loved the hands-off feel they had with him because he just trusted them to do their job. But then if they didn't, there were repercussions. And then but then when the vision changed on a regular basis, because that's what happens with visionaries, with that authoritarian style, it brought confusion, and people didn't know how much effort to really bring to something because it might change here next month. We might be going a whole different way. And so that confusion made it put friction in the ability for the organization to really move quickly and with full strength. There's another current client we have where one of the problems they have is that nobody on board really cares about where they're going other than just trying to make money. And so, and money can be a driving factor for an organization, but as long as they're with a certain vision in mind, not just more. Let's get better, let's get more, let's get more. But if we have actual goals of, okay, well, how do we reach 3 million top line revenue? Oh, okay. And then so you can create systems for that rather than just simple goals. So even though they're more of a coaching style, at less authoritarian, more coaching, it's hard for them to get traction because the goal isn't really that clear. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that kind of that segues us to our next segment, which is, does your communication create clarity or confusion? And before you just dismiss that question, like, of course my communication's creating clarity, be open to some, some scrutiny here. So one thing, I mean, we work with great leaders all the time, and we come into their executive meetings, we come into their weekly L10 meetings, and we start to pick up things. And I have my reticular activating system of my brain set to look for undefined pronouns, because you can use the word "you" a lot in a sentence. You could say he and she. And if you've used that more than a few times in the same paragraph, it starts to get confusing. Like, okay, which he are we talking about? Which they? Which it? And you can get to a place where by the end of that, 3, 4, or 5 different people are hearing 3, 4, or 5 different objectives that you're trying to communicate, and which one is it? And so, I annoy my wife, because I'm always asking her, okay, which she are you talking about? I'm always interjecting these questions of like, which one are we talking about? Which who, which they, and I just need to be clear. I need to be clear on what are we actually talking about. And as a leader speaking to a team, this is something to be listening for in your own words that are coming out of your mouth. What exactly are you saying? So there's some confusion creators that you want to be watchful for. So we're going to hit a few confusion creators. I brought one idea up. Jeff, what comes to mind for you?
You just sparked a whole different thought in me that is conflict resolution, but that's a whole different thing. The other thought I have
Okay.
is using too generalized of terms, and
Mm-hmm.
the word things, the word
Mm-hmm.
ASAP. ASAP doesn't mean anything anymore, because now everything needs to happen as soon as possible. And so if you're saying, hey, I need this done ASAP, that just means put it on the list of things to do. Being clear about deadlines, being clear about metrics, being clear about goals, and not using too generalized of terms like things, ASAP. Um, Things is the main one that I'm struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a team a couple days ago, and I was working on a report that I needed them to finish a task first, and I was currently working on it, and it took me a couple minutes to figure out the text to send to not use ASAP. And what I realized is, okay, what are my actual, because I had to think through what are my actual deadlines here? And
Mm-hmm.
because I need to communicate that more clearly. And the more clear, those are points of the language we use is important, but also it's the heart. And the more clear we are, the less generalized we are, the more power we're going to bring to the team to be able to follow
Mm-hmm.
and give them the tools they need to lead to.
Sure. Yeah, and tools is an important part of what we're doing, because I mean we're talking about communication and alignment to clear communication versus creating confusion, sticking to the why we're doing things, just uh, as opposed to just what we're doing. And the way that you speak and communicate has a lot to do with it, but you also need tools. And we both work on multiple teams. For if you're listening, you don't know, Business Freedom Advisors is what Jeff and I do. We are a fractional executive services firm. So we come into your company and become your C-suite. We all work on the same operating system. And so what that means, the only reason I'm bringing that up is we as a team internally have to be really good. We have to have dialed in tools, because we're not just working on one executive team. We're working on multiple executive teams aside from our own internal business growth goals and communication. So tools. So if you are thinking, a project management tool or a task management tool, it's essential to keep track of all the communication you're doing, so that people don't say, wait, who's doing what by when. No, the tool kind of forces you to say, I know exactly what's happening by this deadline. This happens first, so you know the sequence of what happens next and when it's done by. You know who's assigned to it. And there's tools for that. Every one of the teams that we work with, they automatically, if they already have a system, we'll adopt their system. We'll work within their system. But it's funny, 9 times out of 10, most companies we work with, they don't have an adequate system. We just bring our system with us. That's a part of the service that we bring is project management, communication management, everything that is rolling up to those strategic objectives that are essential and imperative to get done in the next 90 days. Who's doing what by when, it's all in there. And we communicate very clearly. We use an agenda every week to make sure that we're on point with what we should be talking about. And even within a 30 to 60 minute meeting, what we should be talking about at what point in that 30 to 60 minute meeting, all of that is to create clarity over confusion.
Absolutely.
So,
And it's
Jeff,
not just task management, it's also leadership management. And most people look at just task management or project management,
good point.
but it's leadership management is a whole different thing. And are people aligned? What are people thinking about? What's at the top of mind for people? It's people on the team. I mean, it's a whole different way to look at it if you're looking at task management versus leadership management.
Right. So the test question to kind of like think through, whether you think through it internally or ask a few people on your team, is when you think about your last leadership meeting or the last several weeks of leadership meetings or meetings in general, did people leave with more clarity or more fog because of the communication or the tools or the style of meeting that you're doing? All of that can be improved. We want people having absolute clarity, not just about what they're doing, but why they're doing it and who's doing what by when. So just ask yourself, did people leave with more or less fog because of the last meeting? It should be absolute clarity. So with the couple minutes we have left, I want to give you the listener, and Jeff, you'll have the final word here in just a sec, but we're going to put into the show notes of the podcast today some, we always want to make these podcasts practical, some simple, practical practices and self-checks you can do. So I'll run through them and then I'll paste them into the show notes. But the 3 simple practices we're putting in there is the why sentence. So before giving a direction, add 1 line. We're doing this because. So either here's what we're going to do and we're doing this because, or start with we're doing this because. Here's why we're doing this. So it's do this regularly. Quarterly is not enough. Strategic planning day is not enough. Constantly doing this. Oh, by the way, a little quick side note. If you're working with an AI tool like ChatGPT, do that with your prompts. Say, here's what I want, ChatGPT, and here's why I want it. You'll get a much better response from Chat. And Chat told me that, so it's probably true. I actually asked ChatGPT one time, how am I doing as a human? Like, you're a great AI. How am I doing as a human? And I got all of this like, well, you're pretty cool, Scott, but here's a couple of things that I would recommend you do to take it to the next level. And that was one of the things. I'm like, that makes so much sense. Of course, that's what we're talking about. We got to tell why we want this thing. So even AI needs it, but so do your humans. The next one is weekly priority broadcast. So once a week, send out or say, here's the top 3 priorities this week, and order them 1, 2, 3. Prioritization is so critical for clarity. And then let's see, last one, clarity recap habits. So in key meetings and conversations with, what are you hearing as your next step? So have them say it back. That goes back to that Socratic method. So those are a few things. We'll put a few more self-assessments in there, but always we want to encourage you to go to TriMetricQuiz.com. If you haven't done that yet, like, what are you waiting for? TriMetricQuiz.com. It's a good deep dive into all 3 areas of the TriMetric. And Jeff, what's your final word for listeners today as we wrap up today's show?
I would say, since we're talking about clarity, confusion, and alignment, if there's disalignment and bad feelings, which I would call the opposite of peace in relationships on the team, don't just sit by and ignore that. Fight for that. I mean, even Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." That meant people that go and fight for peace. It was a very aggressive term. It didn't mean just creating harmony. It meant finding where there's disunity and creating unity there. And so if there is that on the team, too many people just ignore that or think that's not their role. Get in there and fight it. If I have a problem with somebody, I'm going to go up to them. I'm going to give them a hug. I'm going to say hi first. And if there's a disunity in our relationship, and then just break through that wall of awkwardness so that we can talk about what's really happening. Go fight for peace.
Awesome. And if you're listening to this and we haven't met you yet, we want to meet you. And it's on the other side of that, TriMetricQuiz.com. You can schedule with us, and we'd love to meet you and talk about your results of your TriMetric quiz. So go TriMetricQuiz.com. We'll see you there, and keep listening to the TriMetric Roadmap podcast.
Thanks for listening to the TriMetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the TriMetric quiz. It's not a personality test. It's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to TriMetricQuiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.